Hey guys, welcome to CraterMania. I'm your host, the man they call Crater, and I'd like to welcome you all to How I Got Into Wrestling. This is a show where we learn about how wrestling fans from all over the world give their perspective of how they got into wrestling. And on today's show, we have a very special guest. I've known this man for maybe 15 plus years now. We originally became friends through the Dead Pit message boards and through all of the Dead Pit universe that's out there, all those years ago, through our love for wrestling and horror. And since that time, he has also been a part of the short lived wrestling podcast, The Four. And since that time, he's also done a series of children's horror books called The Adventures of Emma Stein. And I'm super excited to have him on the show. And I'm sure there's going to be some Danhausen talk. So now entering the CraterMania arena, David Caudell, but I'll forever know him as Daveamania.
Oh
How's it
yeah.
going, man?
All right. Hey, dead pit for life, brother.
Dead Pit for life. Too sweet.
There's so many
But
relationships that was built on that message board back in the day.
dude, like it's crazy. Like pretty much almost everybody that I've had on the show so far was, I met them through Dead Pit or on that message board or something like that. And it's just funny, like how it just came this kind of like its own community for so many years, man, and it still is to this day. So, but it's been a while since I've actually got to talk to you, man. Like so how have you been doing?
I've been doing good, man. Been writing my third book in the it's not the Emma Stein series, but Emma Stein will make an appearance in this book. I kind of can't talk about it a lot, but I will say it's very pro wrestling related. So
Interesting. Well,
yeah.
there's some good news. I mean, you're on a wrestling show, so why not talk about it? But we don't want to give away too much, so just keep an eye out for that. But yeah, Dave here, he like I said, he does the Adventures of Emma Stein, children's book series that has horror elements to it. You want to talk a little bit about that, Dave?
Yeah, actually, it all started around COVID. And I was working a job, and this particular job that I have, I just got kind of depressed with it and everything. And I came home and I was real depressed and everything. And I went into the garage and I was just kind of sitting there feeling around the garage a little bit. And anybody that knows me knows my wife and I go out for Halloween. Like we
Mhm.
decorate the house like top to bottom. And I was looking over and I see this monster hand sticking out of the crate. It looked like something out of a horror movie. It looked like something out of Goosebumps. And well, the name just popped in my head, Emma Stein. My wife and I, for years, we tried to have kids, and we always said, "Hey, if we ever have a daughter, we're going to name her Emma." And so the story of two mad scientists that couldn't have their own daughter and created their own. That's how Emma Stein was born.
Oh wow, that's actually a beautiful story, man. I like that. And you can get that up on Amazon, correct?
Amazon.com, Walmart.com. The first book set on the top 200 of Barnes and Nobles for a little while, and then I mean, eventually just dropped. But
Mm.
I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, it's yeah, you can get it at places.
Yeah, and I do for everybody that's wanting now that wants to check out that book. I do have the link to the Amazon link for that book here in the description of this video. So go check that out for sure. But man, let's talk about some wrestling.
All right.
So start this off same way with everybody else, because I think it is the most important question as it applies to this show. How did you get into wrestling, Dave?
Well, I always tell people that it started in the '80s with the Hulkamania era. But really, if I kind of think about it, when my mom was in labor with me, she was watching wrestling.
That's killer.
Which is crazy to think about. I think she was watching. I want to say it was probably Jerry Lawler. Probably more than likely, she was
Mm.
probably watching some Memphis stuff. Um, but yeah, Hogan was my first wrestling superhero. Around WrestleMania 3, WrestleMania 4, that's when I was really starting to kind of get into it. So I was a Hulkamaniac for all through the '80s and early '90s. Um, And as much as, and I don't want to get into this on your show, but as much as I don't like Terry Bollea, I will always love Hulk Hogan, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly, man. And I'm the same way with that because I talked a little bit about that when I had Stuntman Mark on the shows because we talked a little about Chris Benoit. So, and I know that's a controversial subject for a lot of wrestling fans, but I'm the type of person who tries to, the best I can. I know it's hard. It's still a little bit awkward, but
Mhm.
I try to separate the real life stuff from what they do in their wrestling career. And that's why I'll always be a fan of Hulk Hogan. I
Mhm.
like that character. I liked what he did for wrestling, and how he kind of developed that character with in the WCW and the Hollywood Hogan stuff and the NWO. I love all that. But outside of wrestling, it's when he was still alive and he was doing things and saying things that I didn't necessarily agree with. So I try to like just kind of like put that out of stay out of place, out of mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
Terry made it.
whatever.
Terry made it hard. He did. It
He
was like,
sure.
oh, God. Now I'm
Yeah, and
that
then
really cool
man.
Hogan shirt that I've got because I don't want people to think I'm like that.
Exactly. But it's tough. Like I have those same feelings. Like, should I wear this Hogan shirt out in public, or because you kind of worried about like that guy's a racist. Or I was like, well, he was a racist. He's dead now, but
Yeah, right,
but
exactly.
and that really sucks, man. Like like when because so many people couldn't separate that. And if you look at his last appearance on TV for any kind of wrestling, which was WWE,
Mhm.
he was basically booed out of that building. That was I think the premiere of Raw on Netflix. Um, so tough, man. But I mean, I can't sit and lie about it. I can't say, well, I'm not a fan of that stuff because of what he did or what he said. I'm like, no, I still like that character. I have a bunch of like different Hogan action figures still in my collection. So it is what it is. I mean, but everybody's going to have different opinions, but I'm glad me and you can kind of get on the same page there.
Oh yeah, and if I go to Pigeon Forge, I'm going to Hogan's Beach Shop.
Yeah, I want to go. I definitely want to go. I know CK from Dead Pit said that he went there, and he says like if you're a Hogan fan, then you will love that place. They have fucking everything, basically. He said when it comes to Hogan, I was like, wow. So, and I was really hoping like when they announced that they were going to have that location Pigeon Forge that like he might eventually do an appearance, but like shortly after they opened it, like he passed away. So because
Yeah,
he was one of those guys that I never got to meet.
me either. Me either. And it's sad because I would have liked to have went up and at least shake his hand and thank him for the memories they gave me, especially as a child. I'll even thank him for No Holds Barred, which is a shitty fucking movie, but I still love it.
I
So
love that movie. I just showed that movie a few days ago to my little nephew who's huge into wrestling right now. So like I was like, let me show you this movie. He's like, what is this? And I was like, and then he seen the name Hulk Hogan come up like right as when he was rolling the credits, and he was like, Hulk Hogan was in a movie. I was like, oh, brother, well, you're about to embark on an adventure of Hulk Hogan. So I wanted to show him. After that, I wanted to show him Suburban Commando and Mr. Nanny and all that stuff. So he loves like he and where he's just a kid, and I think we were like this a lot when we were kids. We just kind of liked everybody coming and going in wrestling, and that's how he is. So he loves like everybody. He does the old stuff, the current stuff. It I couldn't tell you, when he comes here to our house, um, there's not a moment that he's not watching something wrestling related. So I love to see it, man.
that's awesome. That is so cool.
So how old were you when you first got into wrestling? Do you remember?
I've been 5 or 6. I got into it pretty young. My uncle was only 2 years older than I was growing up, so he was definitely a big influence in me watching wrestling because he would have it on, and I was like, at first I was like, and then I noticed like the pageantry, the characters, and and everything, and I was instantly hooked. And then we would also turn stations over, and it'd be like more serious wrestling with like Flair and and Arn Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
And then like we also got I remember when I was real young, we used to get a USWA out of Memphis
Mm-hmm.
when Jerry Jarrett took it over and changed the name to USWA. I think it was also the name of I want to say this place down in Dallas too. I think that's where the oh shoot, went brain dead for a minute. Blonde hair.
World. Oh, was that the World Class Championship Wrestling?
Yeah. I think he bought that, and then but we used to get stuff from USWA all the time, and like I'd watch Jerry Lawler and Dutch Mantel, and just some of the old guys, the Moondogs. I used to watch them
Mm,
all the time. So actually, the very first wrestler I ever met was Dutch Mantel. I was eight years
really?
I was 8 years old, and my mom took me to a fireman's festival. It was in Austin, Indiana, and he was sitting there, and I was scared to death. He goes, "Hi, David. My name's Dutch Mantel." And he shook his hand. I shook his hand, and that's the only memory I have of that man. Uh, but I remember I had this 8x10. I wish I could find it. I kind of hope it's in my mom and dad's stuff. I'm gonna look one day and see if I can find that old Dutch Mantel 8x10. But it was just him, and he was like in this like you can tell like 80s garb on, and this like woods behind him. So, but yeah, that was the very first wrestler I ever met.
I cannot remember for the life of me who was the first wrestler I ever met. Um, I remember like I almost met Road Dogg when I was a kid because, um, I had been to like other wrestling events and stuff. I'd been to the WWF stuff, and this is around like I want to say either 98 or 99. Um, so there was a place down the road from us. It was like I don't know if you're familiar with Pikeville, Kentucky,
Oh yeah,
uh, but there was a high school there, and they had an event. It's just a local wrestling event, but just a lot of like the guys from around the area. But they brought in Road Dogg and Gold Dust for that show. Um, and after the show was over, like Road Dogg was still in the ring and he was taking pictures and signing autographs for all the fans and stuff. And it was just like $5 or something to get his autograph and get a picture with him. And I remember like begging my dad, it's like, I want to go meet Road Dogg. And he's like, no, we got to go home or something like. And I was so upset. And then like I always, because my older brother was with us at that too. And like, I always talk to him about it. I'm like, "You remember that time, like, we almost met Road Dogg, but dad wanted to go home?" He's like, "Yeah, it's just a typical dad thing to
yeah.
do." Um, but I can't remember who the first one I actually met. I wanna say it was Buff Bagwell.
That sounds
Um,
right, because I think when you was about that age, probably it's when he was kind of like out. Probably was he out of WCW at that time?
well, yeah, because when I can't remember what year it was, but I remember where it was. It was at the Huntington, West Virginia mall. And he was set up, he had a table set up right in front of KB Toy Store. Do you remember KB Toy Store?
Oh yeah,
So he was set up in front of that, and I remember I want to say that was the first wrestler I ever met, but I cannot remember. That's something I'll have to like dig deep later and think about. But you got me kind of perplexed now thinking about that. But that's super cool that you got that Dutch Mantel was the first ever wrestler that you ever met. Do you listen to his podcast or anything?
every so often I'll listen to Dutch. I recently learned that unfortunately he had some health scares, and him and his wife,
Hmm.
they're both in assisted living right now. So definitely my thoughts go out to Dutch Mantel and his wife, for
Oh
sure.
yeah, 100%, man. Um, I hate hearing anybody having to go through that kind of stuff. I know like Reggie Bannister of the Phantasm movies is going through kind of a similar thing as well. And me and my wife both have his wife Gigi on Facebook. So and she's like constantly putting stuff up there, giving updates on him. I think they got him in like hospice care or something right now. So it's really like, my heart goes out to people that have to deal with that. It's tough. Um, but so when you got into wrestling, so you said like, I guess you said WWF was pretty much your first exposure to it, and Hogan was kind of that first guy that was appealed to you and you really became a fan of.
Mhm.
Um, what were some of the other guys around that time that they were kind of stood out to you that you were becoming a fan of?
Definitely Macho Man. Um, and little, even back then, I still love Piper.
Oh, yeah, I've always loved Piper, dude. Like,
Even when he was the bad guy, I'd still there's something about Rowdy Roddy Piper that I loved.
mhm.
Steamboat, um,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
Steamboat for sure. Demolition was my tag team.
Really?
Yeah, I love Demolition. They were awesome. So
I mean,
yeah,
I think I was a big fan of Demolition too. They were kind of coming out of that popularity once I got into wrestling, but I mean, I would go back and rent the old tapes and see there's, and I was a fan of them. It seems like at that time, but I know I was a huge fan of the Road Warriors.
oh
Like
yeah,
when it came to like the tag teams with the face paint stuff, like the Road Warriors were definitely my favorite. Um, but as I've gotten older and stuff, I've definitely appreciated Demolition a lot more, and it's super cool. They're finally going into the WWE Hall of Fame this year.
Mhm.
So I think that's long overdue. Unfortunately, we had to wait too long for it because Vince had this vendetta against them and stuff, and that
Yeah.
whole lawsuit that they were a part of is just very, you know, difficult situation for a lot of those wrestlers, unfortunately. But man, I always love hearing people like show their appreciation for Demolition here on the show. So what about like a lot of those guys kind of like stood out to you that made them appeal to you so much?
The larger than life personas. When I was a kid, it was like a giant comic book. You had Ultimate Warrior, who was just, all energy, and then you got Hogan, who was just kind of like, excuse me, getting over cold. The All American, um, hero basically, and Macho Man was just he was wild. Um, Bruce the Barber Beefcake was another one of my favorites. And then when the Undertaker got involved, he scared shit out of me. So, but he was so cool though. Like I was fascinated. I was so fascinated.
Was there any kind of matches around that time when you were first getting into that kind of stood out to you that made you think, "Hey, this is really cool what they're doing here. I would love to watch more of this."
I was lucky enough to get involved when WrestleMania 3 was hyping
That's
up.
a big one.
So, of course, Hogan and Andre, that was the big one. But later, you go back and watch, and the showstopper, not Shawn Michaels, but the 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 match with Ricky Steamboat and Macho Man. That was the match on that card. Um, and but that match, Hogan and Ultimate Warrior broke my heart. I cried when Hogan lost. Um, but and then obviously when Sergeant Slaughter, turned his back on America.
Oh my god, that was such a crazy time too, looking back at the history of that,
That's
because
crazy.
apparently Slaughter was getting like death threats and all this stuff, and like, so they were very concerned what was going to happen at that WrestleMania, from what I understand.
Oh yeah, and then you also remember the Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth wedding ceremony?
That was at SummerSlam. What year was that? What
I
year?
can't remember, but I remember Jake the Snake got involved.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, cause that all that stuff with Macho Man and Jake the Snake, even though like, so here's another thing. We were talking about like Hogan and like real life stuff. It kind of affecting their fandom. Um, Jake the Snake is another one of those people for me because I was always a fan of him and stuff growing up, especially like his short run he had in WCW in the '90s when he was like feuding against Sting, and they had like the coal miner's glove match and all that. Um, but he came to our town several years back, and like it was advertised as like a night of wrestling stories with Jake the Snake, and but it was very different from what everyone was expecting. So he talked a little bit about wrestling and like behind the scenes stories and stuff. But and it went on, the whole thing was like an hour and a half long. And he may have talked about wrestling for like 15, 20 minutes. And the rest of the show, when he was there talking, was just one of the most depressing, miserable things that I've ever had to sit through, because he talked about some very personal things
Mhm.
that happened, with his real life and his growing up stuff with dealing with his dad and all that. I won't really go into, but like it was just very weird. And I was like looking around while I was at and just looking at everyone's faces and their reactions to this. And it was just so strange. And then like all of a sudden he just kind of came to an abrupt stop of, telling these crazy stories about his personal life. And he goes, well, I got 8x10s up here, $20 a piece, and and everybody was like, "What the fuck?"
Right.
So it was very, very strange. Like, and now whenever I watch his stuff, it's not that I'm, not a fan of his wrestling stuff, but just whenever I watch that his stuff now, I always think of that. Like, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
it's a, it's the same thing with like, you can be a fan of Hogan or Benoit or whoever like in their wrestling career, but like when you see their stuff, it's always going to be in the back of your mind, like the real life stuff that's out there. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um,
Did you ever watch the
and
documentary with him?
I did, and I thought it was really well put together. I, it kind of like felt like a continuation of Beyond the Mat, because they kind of cover a lot of his stuff in the Beyond the Mat documentary that did back in like the late '90s or whatever. Um, but I thought that was really well put together, and I just got to commend DDP for everything that he's done, not just for Jake, but just so many other wrestlers out there, kind of help get their lives back together. You know, it's it's really sad. Like, he helped Scott Hall, but then Scott Hall kind of was like drifting back and forth. I think still with his like issues with alcohol and stuff, and they're towards the end of his life. So um, I don't know, man, but yeah, just it's very go. Sorry to get off topic there, but you were talking about like Macho Man and the wedding him and Elizabeth had, and Jake interrupting that. So was that like something that that really kind of stood out to you at that time? That really like of just the storyline that they were doing with that, or
Oh, absolutely. I don't know what it was, but I was captivated. Um, and I don't know if it's at that time it's like, oh yeah, Miss Elizabeth's hot. I was at
yeah,
that age or something. So, but yeah, that was a story that stuck out. And man, there was so much that happened, and like so many different characters. I remember also another storyline was when the earthquake killed Damien, the snake.
he sat on him, right?
Yeah, set on it. Yeah.
Man, they say that John Tienta, who was Earthquake, they say he was like one of the nicest guys ever was, and that's somebody I wish I could have got to meet too for sure. Because I've seen Fred Ottman, who was Tugboat, he was Typhoon, the Shockmaster. Seen him at like conventions and a lot of shows and stuff too, and so I know he's always got a lot of stuff on his table of the natural disasters. So I was like, man, that sucks that I'll never be able to meet Earthquake to get him signed anything. But like, I love watching these stories, and I think they did like a whole episode on him on Dark Side of the Ring, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's such a good series to watch. It's like you said, it's kind of depressing too. You know,
Hmm.
much episode, but and then there's some uplifting stuff on there too. But it's oh man, that's such a great series.
Oh yeah, and I'm behind. There's a lot. I still haven't watched the John Tenta episode. I've been having a lot of people say you need to watch the Buff Bagwell episode, and I've still not got to see it. So, I had a lot of people come say like, if you're going to watch it, you need to like do a live reaction video of it on your channel. I'm like I'm like, "Huh?" And they're like, "Yeah, you need to for
Yeah,
sure because it's got
I
so I have no idea what's in that episode, what they're talking about, but I I may do that. I don't know. We'll see. Um, but I know me and you were talking before we went live here, and you said that your wife is also a big fan of wrestling as well.
mhm.
Do you, so? What? How did she just get? Was she into wrestling before you guys met? Did you get her into wrestling, or how did that go?
Well, she watched it when she was a kid with her dad and her brother, but it was like always the thing that was on in the background on Monday nights. Yeah.
Hmm.
And then, so she knew the wrestlers and everything. And then when we first got married, we got married back in 2009. And then in 2010, she got me tickets to WrestleMania 27. I think it's 2010, but it was the one that was in Atlanta. And so we went to Atlanta. We went to WrestleMania. We had fun, but obviously it wasn't her thing. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And plus, I mean, to be honest, even though it was WrestleMania, it was probably one of the shittiest WrestleManias. So, but I mean, it was cool just being there. We got to meet Roddy Piper there, Wade
Hmm.
Barrett. And there was a couple more. I think we went to a Dragon Gate show when we were there.
Oh wow.
So she liked the indie stuff. Well, probably around, I'd say it was probably around 2020, 2021. I started watching AEW.
Hmm.
And so she would sit there and I would watch it and she would just kind of look over and just glance at it. And and she started just like, hey, what's this guy's name? Oh, that was cool. And she would just start, and then she'd get on Twitter and she would start following the wrestlers and stuff like that. And also my wife, I'm very proud of her, she's in recovery. So she started to relate to a lot of the wrestlers recovery stories. So she would get on
Hmm.
Twitter and she would talk to the wrestlers. She actually got to a point where her and Dustin Rhodes would talk every once in a while and shoot messages back and forth to each other. But another reason why my wife got into wrestling was because of Danhausen.
Oh.
And it's funny because like I would watch his videos because I got real into Danhausen right around
Hmm.
too. And she's like, these are so stupid. And then she would like drive down the road and something he would say would just pop in her head. And then all of a sudden she was a Fanhausen too. So so yeah, he had a lot to do with it. Ethan Page had a lot to do with it too. The toy vlogs, we would sit and watch those like every single week. And now, I mean, like she is a wrestling, an AEW savant. I mean, she loves AEW. She likes going to indie shows. We recently started going to Billy Starks' promotion. Um, uh, it's called Girl Fight Wrestling. It's all
Oh
female.
yeah. I
It's
didn't. Yeah, I'm familiar with it. I didn't know that Billy Starks was. She like the booker of that, or she just run it, or
she's the booker. She runs it. She's the promoter. Her and her mom. Um,
cool.
it was fantastic. We went to their show last month and we had a ball. So we recently started going there, and then back around COVID, we started going to IWA Mid South. Me and my friends,
Hmm.
and they would have the Outrunners there. They would have we seen Super Crazy there. We'd see some big guys that that Ricky Champage, he was on the card. So we would see some of these guys, and then like a couple of years later, they're on TV. So I mean, support indie wrestling because you never know.
Hell yeah, man! Like, there was a well, it's still going today. It's a promotion called ASW All Star Wrestling, and they're based out of West Virginia. They do shows, like in Logan, West Virginia, Madison, West Virginia, Beckley, West Virginia, and that they one of their biggest shows that they do every year is called the Bash in Beckley, and they always have like a lot of guys, show up for that big show every year. Matt Cardona has been there several times, and he's good friends with the promoter and everything now, and like so that's why they were able to bring him back several times, before he got signed on the WWE again. So, but I've supported them for probably 20 years or something now. And like, cause they're always putting on good shows, bringing in a lot of good talent. And, ASW is where, um, Dax from FTR got started. That's where he wrestled like for years and years before he ended up getting signed, by WWE and NXT or, whatever. But, it's just super cool. Like, yeah, like you said, support indie wrestling because, a lot of these people that are on, the indies right now, you go see them, you get to meet them, especially very easily because, you and I hate to say that because, a lot of these wrestlers that are like in WWE and AEW and places like that where they're all on TV, of course, if they're going to be at a show or something, they're going to have a huge line. You might be waiting sometimes hours before you even get to meet, one of those wrestlers, and it's going to cost you a lot of money.
Yeah,
But I'm telling you, like, go and meet your local indie wrestlers too, because you never know when they're going to be at that level.
exactly.
Because especially if you're already recognizing that they're super talented on the indies as of right now, there's going to be something possibly that comes out of that later for them.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, and that's why, like, my buddy who I had a few weeks ago on the show, Nate Parsons, who goes by Evil Nate, on the indies, and he has kind of this horror, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre type gimmick he does, and I mean he's been doing that for years and years, man. I think close to like 20 years he's been wrestling, and but man, he's really got the passion. I really hope that he does make it somewhere eventually. Because I know he's putting himself out there. He went and he traveled out to California and Texas, and I think he was living out of his car for like a year in Texas. And that's where he was training under Funaki and Rikishi.
Ooh.
So yeah, so definitely, he's trying, to get himself out there, get his name out there. I think he's doing an excellent job. So I really hope the best for him, and just I hope the best for everybody that's on the Indies that really wants to, establish themselves and really kind of garner a name for themselves. I mean, but yeah, definitely support indie wrestling. Everyone, basically, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
So you mentioned what really got her into it was Danhausen, though, right?
yeah. Oh yeah.
So I'm right there with you as well on that. Like that, I started watching Danhausen just from like his YouTube channel, and he was just doing like crazy videos, like unboxing videos and showing off toys, and then going to toy stores with guys like Cardona and Ethan Page and all that. And you guys have met Danhausen several times, right?
Yeah, actually, it's kind of weird because and a lot of what we share friends, which is weird. A buddy of mine, he's real into the hardcore community, the hardcore punk community,
Hmm.
and so he went to shows with Danhausen back in the day, and it's weird because like we would be driving around and he's like, oh yeah, he'll call him Don, and I was like, who? He's like, oh, Danhausen. I was like, oh, okay, cool, but it's odd. It's weird. It's because you're like one or 2 degrees away from that person, but Danhausen's always been super cool with me every chance I had the opportunity to talk with him or whatever. He's got his stepdaughter's got a copy of my book and a doll. So, which I thought was, really cool. Ethan Page's kids, they've got copies of it. Um, so, and we just kind of built a connection because when he was trying to, grow his brand during COVID, it was around the same time I was starting mine. So we kind of talked about that. He's always been super encouraging. It's always super encouraging. And his wife Lauren, she's just as sweet. My wife and her, they talked about recovery stuff together, and everything. So I mean, you could ask for a nicer guy than Donovan Danhausen, and
Yeah,
I was so happy to see him debut, even though he got he got booed so bad, and but I knew, I was like, just wait. I was like, wait till he gets in front of the camera and starts talking, and now I'm like, everybody loves him.
that's what I'm saying, man. Like, I feel like AEW when they got him, they didn't really know what to do with him. They really missed the mark. I don't know if just Tony Khan didn't get it, didn't really understand the character thing, but I think definitely when WWE had their eye on him, someone at least within WWE 's like really got it, and because it's showing now. Like every time that he's on screen since he made his debut in WWE, like you said, it was disappointing to see people boo and everything. But and a lot of people's like, oh well, this is already over with. It's they've already ruined him because people are already booing him. But I was like you, man. I was thinking, yeah, just give it a little bit of time, and then what was it like the very next appearance he made?
Yeah,
Like everybody loved it.
that Raw, he ran into shoot, I went
Adam
blank.
Pierce, I believe,
It was Adam Pierce, and
and the
then
Judgment Day.
yeah, the Judgment Day, the Dominic Mysterio thing. That was the thing that really got him over. And then the the thing he did recently. Have you seen the Code Steve video
Yes,
of him running around saying he's Code Steve? Um, so yeah, it's I messaged his best friend. I was like, hey, did you see this? And he's like, oh my god, yes. I was like, oh my god. And we and him sat there and talked about it, and just he went up to Jelly Roll, and Jelly Roll's kind of like, what the fuck, kind of. So,
I know. I absolutely love it, man. Like it's just seeing him what they're doing with him because it seems like WWE really does get the character, and they're handling it very well so far. I mean, the guy's already like has one of the top T-shirts in the company right now. Right after his debut, one of the very top ones, and just what they're doing with him with all these like, just random different wrestlers backstage. I think that's perfect for that character. Um, do I see him having a lot of in-ring competition? I don't think so. Um, but I just think what they're doing with him right now, it fits in kind of perfectly, like and what better way than to start that off the whole curse thing than with Dominic Mysterio. So I think that's really kind of what's got people invested in the character. Like, oh, who's he going to curse next or whatever. Um, but I was talking to Mark when he was on the show. This idea that I had seen someone talk about online, and I it would be it would be so funny if they did this because it would fit his character, it'd fit that type of humor because he's kind of when he first showed up, he had like the whole list of everything, like his demands, and one was being inducted into the Hall of Fame, this year. Um, and I think I read it on one of these Facebook groups online. This person had said it would be great if, like, at the Hall of Fame this year, before everyone's induction, like Dan Housen would keep trying to sneak onto the stage, and then like they would just have someone like usher him back off stage.
and have one of those big hooks like they did on the Showtime at the Apollo or something,
Yeah, like,
or
and I think that would be hilarious. Um, but there's a lot of people out there I see like, "Oh, I don't get it, or it's not funny. I'm like, but that's the thing, man. Like for the people that do get it and think it is hilarious, like I'm one of those people. I know you're one of those people. It's just it's awesome, man, because I love comedy in wrestling.
yeah,
I think because wrestling has everything, and why can't it have comedy too? Um, and he's one of the funniest guys that there's ever been. Like as far as a character goes in wrestling. I mean, I know a lot of people like to put over our Truth and Santino or Eugene or a lot of these other comedic wrestlers in the past, but I think Danhausen. I think I'm also biased too because it's wrestling, it's horror, like, everything that he's into is, like, what I like as well.
yeah. It's like if we were a wrestling character ourselves,
Exactly.
you know.
Um, So as far as like collecting stuff when it comes to wrestling, I know you talked me and you were talking earlier. You said you have like a lot of the micro brawlers and stuff like that. Is there anything particular like you like to collect most when it comes to wrestling?
Not so much anymore. I used to collect the figures, and then I kind of sold a bunch of those, and then mostly, if anything, it'd probably be 8x10s.
Hmm.
I've got a ton of 8x10s of different wrestlers, at signings or at matches or whatever. I know Shannon got a bunch of them in her AEW box, so we have a bunch of those too. But like I've got some. I'm looking here over here at the side. I'm got let's see, Arn Anderson. I got Jerry the King Lawler, Barbarian, Hacksaw. Um,
Yeah, I actually have like right here beside of me. I have a whole like binder, and this is just well, I have multiple of, but this is just one binder, and it's nothing but wrestling autographs.
mhm,
Um, like I just have like a lot of these I got from off highspots.com. So I've got in person. I've gotten from like the pro wrestling crates that Pro Wrestling Tees does.
mhm.
Um, but this is actually like one of my. You were talking earlier about Memphis wrestling, so it reminded me of this. So this is one of my favorite autographs that I have.
That's
It's
not.
when Jerry Lawler and Andy Kaufman were on the
Ah,
David Letterman show,
that's awesome.
and so I met Lawler in person, had him sign that. But I'm a huge Andy Kaufman fan too, and like because I love the TV show Taxi. I think it's one of the greatest TV shows of all time. But like when I really got into him, later on because I watched that movie that Jim Carrey did, Man on the Moon, and so I started going looking at all this different Andy Kaufman stuff. So I like I said, I already liked Taxi, and then I watched that movie, and then when I watched that movie, that was when I learned, that he was involved in wrestling and the
Mhm.
stuff with Jerry Lawler, and just so. uh, and that is crazy if you think like back then, like when that happened, because I think that was all Andy Kaufman's idea.
Yeah.
Um, was he just slaps the absolute shit out of Andy Kaufman on the Letterman show, and they all like thought it was real. They thought like this is not made up, but I mean, what what do you think about all that? Were you a fan of all that stuff with Lawler and Andy Kaufman?
I was a huge fan of Andy Kaufman. Back in the '90s, there was they ran a special. I think it was on Comedy Central. It was talked about the whole Andy Kaufman wrestling thing angle, and like that's when I first learned about it. I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like he was so ahead of his time. Celebrities getting into wrestling. The big one that comes up is Cindy Lauper, which that's a huge one. But Andy Kaufman, man, he was a pioneer. And just actually getting involved with the matches, and then like now he couldn't get away with some of the shit that he did back then, especially wrestling only women. And
Yeah,
then
and that
that and then Lawler comes along, and that was a whole thing, man. And it drew money. Like people
mhm.
paid money to go to the Memphis Coliseum to watch Lawler beat the shit out of Andy Kaufman.
And a lot of people, because that happened back in like the '70s, with Kaufman and Lawler and all that at Memphis Wrestling, and it, a lot of people will credit like Hogan and WWF and like bringing in, which he did really bring wrestling into the mainstream and like and made it like a pop culture thing by having them bring in like celebrities at the first WrestleMania, like Cindy Lauper, Muhammad Ali, and Liberace, and everybody was there. But really, like Andy Kaufman was kind of the first celebrity to really kind of be connected to wrestling.
Yeah,
And do you think if it were, the WWF or the NWA, then it would have had a bigger impact than what it did because he was with Memphis Wrestling?
I think maybe, but I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to tell because I know fans of Memphis wrestling are super passionate. I mean,
Mhm.
like you still hear story. Well, you live down south. You hear
Mhm.
you hear stories about, well, it's not like how it used to be, which is kind of like the same shit that we say, too. But like, and they're passionate even about today. Like, you get an old timer talking about like uh Bill Dundee and Jerry Lawler and Tojo Yamamoto and all those guys.
Hmm.
Get those guys talking about those wrestlers and stuff. It's like they go way back. It's just like it's like a time capsule or something inside their brain, and they just love it. And Memphis wrestling fans, they were rabid back then. They
Oh
would
yeah.
sell out the Coliseum weekly. It was a guaranteed paycheck. And then you get a guy like Kaufman coming in, and then you're drawing all this like extra like mainstream attention to it. I don't know. I think it could have worked in NWA and stuff like that, but man, I don't know if it would have the same emotional impact as.
Right, because it seems like where Memphis wrestling, it was all that was kind of syndicated within that area. It felt like they could get away with a lot more than what they would have in NWA or WWF at that time. Um, and but just man, what a time! I mean, I know that was way before I was ever born, but like I I would love to just been around just for a day, in that era of wrestling, just to see, because that's what I explained to my nephew and a lot of the younger people that are getting into wrestling now, like because I'm back in my day in the Attitude Era and all that, so a lot of people say, well, the Attitude Era doesn't, especially a lot of younger people now that's kind of getting into wrestling. So there's like, well, Attitude Era doesn't seem like really any different from anything else. But I'm like, oh, well, let me tell you, it was. It was a very different time, and I'm sure that's the same way it was with back in the '70s with Memphis, wrestling and the NWA and all that. And that's why I say, like, I would love to just be around for just for a day to experience that, so I could know that feeling. Because and I wish that for so many other people that are younger than me that didn't get to experience the Attitude Era and the Monday Night Wars and what it was really like, what it really felt like to be a wrestling fan during that time. Um, but with the Speaking of Jerry Lawler and Memphis wrestling and everything, so I can remember like when me and my wife and my brother-in-law, we went to Memphis for this music festival down there called Beale Street Music Festival. It was
Mhm.
like 3 days, just all different types of genres of bands. There was a great time. But like while we were down there, we were just kind of looking for other things to do, when we weren't at the festival. And when I was like Googling online, the Jerry Lawler Museum came up. And I was like, what is this? And it was like, and I think he has like a restaurant or something now in Memphis that he has all that stuff in. But at the time when we went, it was in a used car lot, and they had, and you went in, and I don't see anything. And then there was a guy like inside the dealership, and I was like, yeah, we're looking for the Jerry Lawler Museum. He's like, oh, come with me. And then like, so he took me to the back of this used car lot like building, and then there was this huge room like that they just had in the back, and they had like when you first walk into it, there's this huge like throne you can take pictures in, and then you go through there, and that's all these different TVs are playing with different Memphis wrestling stuff on the TVs, and that's all his different attires and like all these different drawings and just tons of Jerry Lawler memorabilia everywhere, and it was free to get in. You didn't have to pay anything to go and look at any of that stuff, but um, I just remember thinking, "Holy shit, this is awesome!" Like all this stuff is like wrestling history right here that was way before our time, but it's amazing to see that.
That's awesome. That was awesome. One of the things I do kind of regret when we went to WrestleMania was Abdul the Butcher's restaurant was in Atlanta,
Oh yeah.
Chinese restaurant, and I was like, I want to go because they had like a bunch of wrestling memorabilia inside of it. And buddy, his mom was like, no, you don't want to go. I guess I guess the food made him sick or something. So he's like, oh, we probably won't go to that. Like,
I know he has a lot of health issues nowadays, but I remember people would say like if you went to that restaurant, he was usually almost always there.
yeah, and he got inducted in the Hall of Fame that weekend too. So Yeah, we were thinking about going, but I think we ended up going to Dragon Gate instead.
Mm. Um, and you said it was WrestleMania 27 you went to?
Yes, yes.
So
That
was that 2010 or 2011?
it might have
Because
been. Shoot, I've got the thing right here.
I know that because I went to WrestleMania 30, and I know that was in 2014.
Okay,
So
it might have been. It was the one with the Miz versus John Cena as
oh, okay, okay, yeah, I think that was 2011.
and then the
Uh,
Rock back. The Rock was yeah. It was 2011. It was 2011.
so was that in it? You said that was in Atlanta because I couldn't remember where they had that.
Yeah, that was in Atlanta. That was at the old Georgia Dome.
So when we went to WrestleMania 30, which was at the Superdome
Mm,
in New Orleans. I just I just remember just how hilarious it was because it was so surreal too just to see Stone Cold, Hogan, and The Rock open up that show. But then Hogan kept calling that place the Silver Dome, and everybody was like trying to correct him, and he just kept saying it. I was just like, it's
I rem-
hilarious.
I remember that because did the announcers say something too?
Something like that, but, that was the only WrestleMania that I ever got to go to, and I probably won't get to go to another one if the prices stay the way they are.
Dude, that's
Uh,
another. That's a whole another topic we can get into is the WWE prices right now. But you know, that-
yeah, that's a whole show in itself for sure because, like, it's just frustrating, dude, especially as a wrestling fan, like, I'm not a rich guy, I'm not somebody that has, like, unlimited amounts of money, and but that it just that applies to so many things now these days, man, like, not just wrestling, but, like, um for the past 17 years, I've went to the horror movie conventions and Comic Cons and stuff, and the pricing on that stuff, that's it's just ridiculous and it's
awful.
crazy nowadays, man. Like I mean, I try to still go to them and have fun, but just like I don't do a lot of the celebrity aspect stuff anymore when it comes to those shows.
I think the last one I did was Elvira, and it was because it was the last time she was going to wear her
Outfit, yeah.
outfit, and it was down in Louisville, and me and my buddy went and got a photo op, and that was, gosh, maybe close to 8, 9 years ago, something like that.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's gotten so bad, it's just the prices of things, but and WWE included.
Yeah, just and Robert Englund, and when it comes to horror conventions and stuff, like he every time I see him do a show, his price is more than it was the last show he did, and I think right now he's like 150 for an autograph or something. That's per item. So I'm like, for too long, he'll probably be $200, and a lot of people say, well, it's because he's getting older and stuff. I'm like, well, that has nothing to do with it. I mean, like, there's a lot of people that are the same age as him that are doing these conventions, and they don't charge that much.
Exactly.
But also, like, well, he's a big name. He is Freddy Krueger. He's iconic. I mean,
Yeah.
but at the same time, like, come on, that's that price is that he's asking is crazy,
It
crazy.
and that goes back to our conversation, support indie wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
Because again, like when it comes to wrestling, I know we're getting a little bit off topic talking about horror and stuff, but then, hey, it is what it is. Wrestling and horror kind of go hand in hand.
exactly.
But yeah, support indie wrestling for sure because and support all these, these guys and gals that are out there, on the indie circuit. Get to know them, become, show your fandom for them as you would somebody that you watch on TV because one of these days they could be on TV themselves and they might not be as available, for these shows as they once were, these local indie shows. So for sure, support everyone you can in all of indie wrestling for sure.
And
Um,
they remember that. They remember the people that helped bring them to the
mm,
show. And proof is that is like over the past week, I made a video. I think you've seen it. It was a video of me talking about, hey, there's no better person you can support than Donovan Danhausen. And
yeah,
I was talking about some of the nice, the interactions I've had with him personally and everything. You know who the first person was that liked that video?
Was
Dan
Danhausen? That's
Danhouse.
awesome.
Yeah.
That, that's great, man. And like, because would you have ever guessed that he would be in WWE
No.
when you first like started following that guy? Like, I never would have thought and and I wouldn't even give it a thought. Like, I mean, when he went to AEW, I was like, that's great, but I was like, but that's probably as far as he'll go. But man, like he's just raised his stock here in these past few years. And I think like you said, the kind of connections that people make, it kind of helps you, remember. Like, and I know his friendship with CM Punk probably has a lot to do with why he got to be brought into WWE because Punk knows what kind of person he is and knows how he could really benefit them. And look, I mean, he's not even been there a month, dude, and he's already benefiting them, money wise, like you
Mm-hmm.
know, in crazy ways. So it's I'm so proud of that dude for you know how far he's come, and just I can't wait to see what they do with him. Really, I mean,
He's the Page is another one. He's in NXT right now, and
exactly.
that dude. We went to a signing, and he's like, "Hey, I know you." I was like, "Yeah, we met." He's like, "No, I remember you." Like he actually remembered. Which is kind of cool. So
And it's a great feeling. I talked about this before with someone, but it's a great feeling when you have met like someone that you admire, and then like if you meet them again later down the road, they actually remember you. And there's not too many people that I have met when it comes, when they have high celebrity status that has remembered me. I mean, there's been a few because I'd seen them so many times, like Kane Hodder and Ari Lehman, guys like that. But when it comes to wrestlers, I've only had one, like big name wrestler that actually remembered who I was, and that was Roddy Piper. Um, and I'm like, dude, that's so crazy because like think of the amount of people that he meets. He had to had like a super memory or
yeah.
something because like we met him at Days of the Dead convention in Indianapolis back in I think it was 2011.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first time I ever met him, and just one of the nicest guys I've ever met when it comes to wrestlers, and and he really took his time with us and everything, and like we didn't see him again for maybe like 2 years after that. And he remembered us, like he's like, "Hey, I remember you," and he like remembered where we met and everything. And I was like, "Holy shit!" Like Roddy Piper remembered us.
That's awesome.
It,
And he's
it,
such a guy. He was such a nice guy.
he is, man. Like when we
Time with
we
us.
went at that show, like we because my I had a friend that was at the time he was running or he's helping run Days of the Dead, and when he knew that I was coming to the show, and he knew I was a big wrestling fan and everything, and he knew I was pretty much just coming for Piper at that show. So I show up, and then he's like, "Hey man, where are you going?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go get Piper's line over here." And he's like, "Come on!" He just like grabs me and he took me straight to the front of the line, like gave me VIP treatment, and I was like, "Holy shit!" And then um, we talked just about wrestling and They Live and Hell Comes to Frogtown and all kinds of stuff for like probably at least 10 minutes. I mean, it was one of the best like celebrity experiences I've ever had. Um, and I just wish more people that are kind of getting into it now could have got to meet Roddy Piper and just found out for themselves what this wonderful human being that he was.
He was so nice. Like when we went to he was doing the signing at WrestleMania. It was like WrestleMania Access, and they had him with Arn Anderson. So, which okay, Piper, Piper will take his time with you. He will answer questions. He like with the uh kids with special needs, he will take actually get behind out from behind the booth and like go especially if they're like wheelchair or something, and like actually like make that connection. I love Arn Anderson to death. I do, but he was so damn grumpy that day.
Oh no.
Because I think a lot of it had to do with just the fact that Piper was like, it was a line,
Yeah.
and Piper was taking his time with everybody, and Arn was just wanting to get his signature, maybe a handshake, maybe a we got a picture of us doing the four horsemen hand signal, and then but Piper, man, he was like, and I had a Red Sox hat on at the time. He's like, "Oh, you guys from Boston?" I was like, "No, we're just Red Sox fan." And the only thing I could have asked that man 100 different wrestling questions, and the only thing that came out of my mouth was, "Dude, they live ruled."
That happens. So I've had that happen myself. Like I've met different people, and then like I've always had plans. Like, well, I'm gonna ask them this question, or I want to talk to them about this. But then like I've I've had instances where I just walk up to them and I don't. Nothing really even comes out remotely of what I'd planned. So I think it's just we kind of get caught up in the moment sometimes of this because we're so have such admiration for these people that it just and I'm not usually a very nervous person, but
Right.
and you may laugh at this, but man, when I met Charles Band, like I was so nervous because like I growing up, I was such a huge Puppet Master fan and everything that Full Moon was putting out. And the show I met him at, he was signing for free. So he like signed, I had like 10 different things. He signed everything for free. And he's like, "You got anything else?" I was like, "Not with me," but just another guy, one of the super chill, like one of the nicest guys, ever was. And I know a lot of people, especially Dead Pit, like to give Charles Band and Full Moon shit, but like, dude, he was a cool guy. I
Right.
can't lie.
Yeah. The
But
ones I've ever met was. Have you ever had a chance to meet Foley?
oh man, several different times. The first time I ever met Foley, it was when me and Candace we were just still dating at the time, and he was in TNA at the time. So I think he was the TNA champion at the time because he had just put this a new book out, and he was doing a book tour, and he was at Marshall University in West Virginia, and so we went there and met him, and had him sign our books, and then he would sign whatever else too, and then take a picture with you. Um, and like I said, I've met him several other times, after that too. But like, yeah, another one of the nicest wrestlers you'll ever meet, for
So
sure.
sweet guy. Shannon and I. It was kind of funny because you guys were talking about you guys were dating at the time. Me and Shannon were dating, and we've
Mhm.
been only dating for like a month or so. And I had a first edition of his first book, and I was like, oh, he's going to be at this drive-in. He was at a horror convention in Louisville, and they did something with the Georgetown Drive-In.
Oh,
So
okay.
they had him and like Daniel Harris was there and a bunch of other people. But I was like, I'm meeting Foley. I'm meeting Foley. So I'll go there and like I don't get nervous around people very often, like you said, but Piper was different and Foley was different. I was
Mhm.
nervous with Foley and I handed him my book and he signed it. He's such a nice guy. I sat there and talked to him. I was like, man, you're my hero. You're my favorite wrestler. I've been a big fan of Cactus Jack for forever. And he's like, oh wow, where have you seen me wrestle at? And I'd tell him different places and stuff. And then I'd have him sign the book. He's like, how should I make this out to? I was like, make it out to Dave and Shannon. Keep in mind, me and Shannon's only been dating for about a month at that time.
Mhm.
So I'm like, oh fuck, I gotta marry this girl now. But no, it ended up working out. And I'm so glad it did because no, I got the best wife, and 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 we laugh about that all the time. So we say next time we meet Foley, we're going to bring that picture of us together and say, hey, you caused this. And just to have just because I know that he would get such a kick out of that.
And that's very similar to kind of what happened with me and Candace. Like, um, we had just been together for I think like a month, and I took she didn't even know anything about like the whole conventions or anything like she didn't even know anything like that existed. So like and I was already heavy into it and had been doing it for like over a year at that point when me and her got together. So the first kind of big show that she got to experience was Scarefest in Lexington, and we met John Amplis, who's in a lot of Romero stuff, um, and I got an autograph from him, but I decided to do like put to Chris and Candace. So, like, and so I'm like you. I'm like now. I was like, I'm thankfully it worked out, because
Yeah.
I think that's what we did. Like on everything, like every person we met at that Scarefest, like we had them sign. I had them signed to Chris and Candace on like everything. Like I have an Evil Dead poster that's signed by like everybody from the movie, and the first person to sign it was Bruce Campbell, and I have to Chris and Candace on that as well. So I was like, well, I was like, this better work out, or
Right.
I'm gonna have a lot of stuff, around the house. I'm gonna have to try to get her name off there, but no. But
I,
thankfully, everything worked out. Me and her's been together for 16 years now. So yeah,
yeah. So me and Shan's been together for about 17, 18. So yeah, we probably started dating our significant others around the same time. So
probably so.
yeah.
Um, um, so the next thing I want to ask you, so we were talking a little bit about wrestling, the modern wrestling stuff earlier, but like so, and I know you're still a fan, nowadays. So how do you feel about the state of wrestling today as opposed to when you got into it initially years ago?
Well, I try not to be an old man about it too much because I know things change, and
Yeah.
I could say things, yeah, but yeah, it's not what it used to be, and it in a lot of ways it's not. But I think just because I have a feeling about the era that I got introduced, this is somebody else's era that they're getting introduced, and I want to make it as special for them as possible, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
It's like you were talking about your little nephew. It's you're telling him about the past and everything, but you also have the enjoyment of being able to experience this new era with him.
Yeah.
And seeing it through a child's eye. So even I have a bad time about fantasy booking. What I would do different, and I think that's because I probably listened to too much Cornette. Which I love Cornette. I don't agree with everything he says, but I love Cornette. I've been listening to Cornette in some fashion for the last 20 years. But I try to keep it, as far as like professional wrestling now, I still say support the indies as much as possible, and try to get out of that WWE bubble.
Hmm.
WWE's fine.
Absolutely.
That's great. I enjoy a lot of WWE. But try to get out of that WWE bubble. There's different flavors of ice cream out there, and there's different flavors of wrestling out there too.
Hmm. And I have a lot of friends that are like that. I've tried to get them, because they're big in the WWE, and that's when it comes to wrestling, that's about all they watch, and that's about all they know. Like, and I'll try to talk to them about AEW or TNA or, even like JCW, because I think JCW is doing some really neat stuff right now.
I love J-
Uh,
I
and
love
then yeah, man. Like, I mean, I think that right now, I mean, even though I'm not the biggest Vince Russo fan or anything, I really like what they're doing with him. And like, even guys like Vito, who was, in WCW back in the day, he's in JCW. He's kind of like one of their main focuses right now. So, I mean, and then, girls like Mickey Knuckles, I've known of her for years. I mean, I remember years ago, Mickey Knuckles was on TNA, but her name was Moose, and she was billed from Hazard, Kentucky, which is where I'm from. So
right.
I'm like, and I remember seeing that when it was on TV. I was like, what the hell? I was like, and I knew who she was because like she had done like a lot of independent stuff around the area too. Like, I mentioned that promotion ASW earlier. In West Virginia, and like she did shows for them, and Madman Pondo was doing shows for them. So that's how I got to know Madman Pondo, and found out that he didn't live really that far away from where I was at the time. So and just and if you follow that kind of wrestling, death match wrestling and stuff like that, Madman Pondo was just a legend when it comes to that stuff, and and over in Japan, and working with guys like Necro Butcher, which was another deathmatch guy who was actually in the movie The Wrestler, um, and me and CK have talked about this several times in the past, but like when you watch The Wrestler and you see a lot of like independent shows with these kind of guys that were big on TV, 20 years prior, and they're like showing up and they're just having like a table with no line at these little indie shows. That's really how it is. Like when you see that in The Wrestler, that's really how it is sometimes. Not all the time, but it is for a lot of the guys I've you know, uh, I'll use Virgil as example, God bless him, but Virgil was at there for several years. He was just going and setting a table up anywhere, like, just and kind of a very sad story. I know people laughed about it, we joked about it, stuff, but it really is kind of sad when, a lot of these wrestlers have to go through that. They were at the top of their game, years before, but then they're kind of like brought down to that, and it's almost, like you feel bad for them.
You do. You really do. And that movie, man, that movie fucked me up first time I watched it. And then like a buddy of mine, we always talk about, and we joke about it now, like the part with the where he punches the meat slicer.
Yeah.
It's like, we'll just randomly look at each other, and go ah, you know. Just, but dude, that movie was. I mean, it's real. It's real life. You can. I'm sure that a lot of those guys can relate to that character.
Have you watched the Iron Claw? Yeah, I know it came out a few years ago. Have you watched it?
I have. We went to the theater to see it.
I've still not got to watch it yet. I need to sit down sometime and watch that, but I haven't been watching a whole lot of movies here lately. But there's kind of it's not really burnout or anything, but like I've mentioned this before. I did watch 500 movies last year and review every single one of them on my channel. So,
Right.
I think it was kind of expected. I was like, I'm gonna take a break from movies for a while, but and there's like several new ones. Like I've still not seen Scream 7. There's a lot of stuff that's come out here recently. I haven't watched yet. So,
I haven't Scream 7 either. But Iron Claw, I mean, it's a good movie. It's not, there's a lot of, they take a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? Creative
liberties.
liberties. Yes, thank you. Like one of the brothers that died, they basically tied him into one person, or two of the brothers that died, they basically tied him into one person.
Mm.
So, but overall, it's a great movie. It's just not, 100% accurate.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and I'm, my brother, really, I have him to thank for this. My older brother is a huge fan of the Von Erichs and all that, so he really kind of not only did he get me into wrestling and like it the way that I do nowadays, but he really got me into a lot of these guys who, which Kevin Von Erich, not Kevin Von, but Kerry Von Erich was on WWE TV. He was in the NWA because he was the NWA champion. He was the Intercontinental champion as the Texas Tornado in WWE. But a lot of those, his brothers and all that were into wrestling. I may have not even known about them if it weren't for my older brother and kind of showing me because we, like I said, we would go to the video store. They would have a lot of different, videotapes that you could rent from WWF stuff to NWA stuff, and they had world class tapes that you could rent there as well. So that's really how I kind of came to be a fan of the Von Erichs. So yeah, I really need to watch that movie because I've heard a lot of great things about it. Um, but is there anything like, from wrestling in the past that you loved about it that you really don't see enough of anymore that you wish would kind of come back into modern wrestling?
Yes, I think you've covered this in a couple of your shows before. I think a couple of the guests probably said something similar. Pre-internet, the,
Oh
the
yeah.
the surprise element, which I mean, you get the surprise element sometimes, but a lot of times, you'll know who's going to debut of the week before, or it'll get it'll leak out on the dirt sheets, or
Yeah.
which I think the internet made the industry evolve. It had to lift the curtain. It had to, because I mean, for one, I mean, a lot of it too, it was because of the whole Vince steroid scandal too. But I think the industry had to evolve, and had to be like, okay, this is predetermined, and so it, I guess my answer would probably be more like kayfabe. I kind of miss that in a way, and that might just be me looking back, when I was a kid, because the bad guys were the bad guys, the good guys were the good guys. But yeah, that's probably about the only thing I can think of as far as like what I miss. That maybe some cheaper prices.
That very true. But yeah, you're 100% right on that, man. Like, and it's sad because, I've like I said, I talked about my nephew, and he's just 7 years old. He's really heavy into it, but like he's even, even at the age as early as he's getting into it, he already knows like everything behind the scenes and stuff, and he knows that it's scripted. He knows like it's just a form of entertainment, just like any other TV show or movie or whatever. Um, and that kind of makes me sad, if I'm being honest, man, because when I was a kid and there was no internet, we just had only thing we kind of had to go based off when it came to dirt sheets was if you read something out of one of the wrestling magazines like Pro Wrestling Illustrated or something. But just the internet has access to everything pretty much that you want to know about a wrestler or a wrestling company, or what they're doing, or what hotel they're staying at, or what restaurant they're eating at, or whatever, what color underwear they have. um, but it's sad, man. It really, especially it makes me sad for like the kids who, cause it steals away a lot of that magic of wrestling, cause I, for years up until I was about maybe 12 years old, I thought it was real. I mean, I didn't think of it any different from like real life. I was like, I thought these guys really hate each other. I thought they were really trying to, beat the shit out of each other all the time. And that's what appealed to me. So I was like, I don't know what it is, but it's something very like entertaining about that.
Mhm.
Um, I'm just glad that, these kids, even though they do know the secrets and all the behind scenes stuff nowadays, thanks to the internet, that they can still, get a lot of enjoyment out of it. I think that's all that matters, really.
Yeah, it really is. And another thing I kind of miss is tape trading. Yeah,
Yes.
that was, oh my gosh, I don't want to mention the guy's name because of you know, past scandals, but there's a website you could go on and you can pretty much order anything you wanted off this guy's site. Like I remember being so excited. It's like, I got some, death matches with Terry Funk and Cactus Jack from Japan. Let's go back home and watch it. And or like I think it was one of Terry Funk's very first like retirement like matches or whatever. They had like a great big show. I think there was some guys from WCW that was on the card, some guys from
Is
ECW.
Was it the event that they covered in Beyond the Mat?
Believe it was. I believe it was.
Is it
Um,
where Terry Funk, I think, faces Bret Hart on that show?
I believe it is. I have a copy of that somewhere around the
Oh,
house.
wow.
It's just I missed that because it was like you discovered something. But now you can literally just log on to your computer or log on to your phone and pull
Yeah.
that match. That was something special because you would get people to come over, you get your friends, and then you would trade, or you would like record, different like matches for people, or whatever. But that's one thing I miss, and that built community too, you know, which you know I swear I'm trying not to sound like an old man, but I think that's what's missing. Yeah, you get the community online and whatnot, and we've experienced that too with the Dead Pit message boards. But
Mhm.
like that tape trading community was just insane.
It was definitely a very different time, and I'm right there with you, man. I miss that. That's the tape trading stuff is really how I got into ECW. I knew about ECW already because of the magazines. Because like I grew up, they didn't never show it on TV or anywhere. So the only way I knew about it at the time was through the magazines like Pro Wrestling Illustrated. So I'd read about these matches, these different wrestlers stuff, but didn't really know anything else about them, beyond that because I'd never seen them on TV. I didn't really start seeing them on TV until like Raven when he showed up in WCW in '97, and when they were kind of doing like that ECW angle in WWF where they were helping them promote the Barely Legal pay per view and all that. Um, so it was around that time when I kind of started getting into the tape trading, and like there was a guy I think at our local flea market, or it might have been somebody my brother knew. I can't really remember because we did both. Because there was a guy like at the flea market that had tapes, and then my brother knew this had a friend too that would like get tapes from other people, and then and it was just kind of like all I'd traded this person, that person traded this person, that person would trade back to me, and
Hmm.
so forth. So, and I love that, and that's how I discovered a lot of guys that I would have never knew about any other way.
Yeah.
Um, but like as you said, the internet has all that covered pretty much nowadays. So it's not as fun, I don't think, when you can just kind of like go and look for any. I mean, it has. I see both sides,
I do
honestly.
too.
It's great that you can
Yeah.
go and find anything, but I feel like it's more fun if you're on like the hunt for that, and it makes it more difficult. Does that make sense?
No, I agree with you because I say the same thing about video stores. Like I love being able to stream my stuff because I'm very lazy when it comes to when it comes to that kind of thing. But at the same time, I was like, man, I wish I could go to like mom and pop, and just pick out a horror movie for the night or something. I miss that. I get a pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
But you could still do that. Like I thought about doing this thing with my son and my nephews, and like just try to live, um, at least just a week, like how me and my wife did in the '90s, and
mhm.
just to see how they would react to it. Like no, and I know that would be the biggest thing for them would be like no internet for like a week. It'd be probably driving them crazy. But like I would love to do that. Like just watch like TV shows and movies, just do different activities like the stuff that we grew up doing in the '90s as kids. I think that would be a lot of fun, but I don't think they'd ever go for it. To be honest with you.
There's actually a really cool board game my wife and I came across. I think it's called Book It. We've got a copy of it here at the house, but you book your own wrestling matches.
Hmm.
It's really cool. Like of it, they'll have characters, and you can kind of tell who they're based off of.
Mhm.
But you'll start a promotion, and then you'll like it's really cool. You should look into it. I'm sure your son and your nephew would love it.
Is it kind of like Dungeons and Dragons but with wrestling?
No, it's kind of like just. It's like a card game in a way,
Okay.
but it's really cool. It's not like where you have to collect cards like Pokemon cards or nothing like that,
Right.
like Magic or anything like that. But it's an actual board game, but with cards, and you basically just book your own matches. And you kind of see who has like the bigger draw, and that's how you win.
So do you have like a judge or something in there that kind of like who picks?
I think it goes by different aspects. It's been a while since we played. I think you have to like it goes by like how much money you've made, how much.
Oh, okay, I see. I didn't know if it was kind of like how. Have you ever played Cards Against Humanity?
Yeah, yeah,
You know how like you have to have like one player that will be like the judge or whatever of like pick who has the best cards,
yeah.
or whatever, who has the funniest cards. But I didn't know if it was like that or not, like where you just kind of like you have someone. it could be like the fan, the wrestling fan, and you have like this show and that show, and they get to pick who puts on the better show.
Right.
But which that could be a game we could make up ourselves.
Hey, dude, I think, hey, let's do it.
So moving on, just I want to ask you because I ask this to everybody. So when it comes to dream matches, I mean, I know there's a lot of dream matches that have happened, but what is your biggest dream match that has never happened?
But
And
between
it
people,
and it, and it can be with anybody, alive or dead. Like
oh,
so, just
well, I always wanted to see Sting versus Undertaker. I
of
think a,
course.
I think a lot of people say that. I think Hogan and Austin would have been awesome. Trying to think of who else would have been. Man, that's a tough one. But yeah, those would probably be my two that I'll go to. I'm sure I could probably think of 10 different more later.
Yeah, I think those are always definitely high up on people's like when it comes to their dream matches. Austin Hogan. I think Austin and Cena would have been cool.
Hmm.
Um, definitely Sting and Undertaker. I mentioned this one to Pizzelle. I wanted to get your thoughts on it, but like I have one of my biggest dream matches is a tag match between Sting and the Ultimate Warrior versus the Road Warriors.
That would
Uh,
that would have been awesome.
I mean, I've seen Sting and like Luger take on the Road Warriors, but like Sting and Ultimate Warrior were at one point they were the Blade Runners. They were
Like,
attacking. That's how they got into it. I would love to see that. Just them take on the Road Warriors if it ever happened. I'm not aware of it. If somebody does know if it's out there on the internet somewhere, send it to me. I'd love to see that.
I was trying to think of their tag name actually earlier tonight. I was sitting there talking with Shannon. And I was like, Ultimate Warrior was known as the Dingo Warrior. I was like, but I can't remember what their tag name. And I was about to Google it, but I got off track. So it's kind of funny that you mentioned that. So
So yeah, Sting was Blade Runner Flash, and I forget what Warrior went by. I, c- but I know that Sting was Blade Runner Flash, um, and I know I seen recently that Sting he filed for copyright for Blade Runner Flash. So I don't know if he's doing something. He's trying to put something out with that character. So it's interesting just to see like it goes back to what we were talking about again. Like the internet will tell you everything that's going on that these wrestlers are doing if they're filing copyright for something. If like anything that's pretty much going on with them, you will find out somewhere or another through the internet.
oh, for sure. And funny that you mentioned Sting, his son's wrestling now.
Oh my god, he looks just like him too.
Looks just
He's
like
almost.
yeah, and I think they're doing him the right way. Like
Mhm.
they're making him earn his way. Like it's not just because you have that last name that you're going to a company. Darby Allin's actually training him, so
Yeah. And I think that's what Sting said, like, he wanted him to do it that way specifically because, there's a lot of stuff, especially amongst wrestling fans, because, and don't get me wrong, because I love wrestling fans, because that's why I'm doing this show. But there is a lot of toxic stuff that goes back and forth online between wrestling fans, and I absolutely hate seeing that stuff. I'm like, we all love this one thing. We all are here for the same reason. Like we don't need to be arguing about another wrestler, like what they're going to do or what's going on in their life that doesn't mean anything to us.
right.
So, but one of the biggest things I've seen people complain about online is nepotism. Um, and I love Cody Rhodes, man, and I know a lot of people will have shit on him here the past year or so, and like I've seen a lot of people talk about like he's only in this spot because he's Dusty Rhodes' son and all that, and I hate that shit, man, because I really feel like Cody has earned his spot,
He has.
And I really hope the same thing happens for Sting's son. Uh,
Yes.
and they're doing it the right way. Like he's not throwing him in there like, oh well, this is Sting's son, so let's go ahead and give him a contract. Let's put him in these top spots. No, he's out there. He's on the indies, and he's trying to make a name for himself. I mean, he's already really made a name for himself. He's Sting's son. Let's
Right.
be honest.
Yeah.
But they're doing it. They're handling it the right way. They're trying. They want him to earn that spot.
Yeah.
And from what I've seen, he's been doing a great job, man.
Yeah, and like going back to Cody. Cody had to do the same thing. He left WWE, did the Indies, he did New Japan. One of my very good friends is a wrestler by the name of BMD. Brett Michael David. He wrestles for Alpha One, which is Ethan Page's wrestling company in Hamilton, Canada. Look him up, Alpha One Wrestling. Um, he said Cody Rhodes was one of the nicest guys he's ever met. And a funny story that he said is like they all went out to a bar one night, and it was like Brett and a couple of the guys from Alpha One, and Brett's wife Tori was with them. And all of a sudden, Cody Rhodes just pulls this harmonica out of his pocket and just starts playing harmonica. Just like, and I always wanted to go up and meet Cody Rhodes and be like, "Hey, do you still play harmonica?" Just to flip the pig. Just be like, "How the fuck did you know that I play harmonica?" But yeah, check out Alpha One Wrestling. So
Oh, 100, yeah, absolutely, man. Do you know if they have like they're on Instagram or anything? Do they have like videos on YouTube?
they do. Yeah, Alpha One Wrestling. I think it's alpha1wrestling.com.
Okay.
On Instagram. Yeah, uh, they do a show. I think either like once or twice, once a month or once every other month, and they do it all on YouTube. They were under High Spots for a while, but they went to YouTube.
Oh yeah, because I think that High Spots TV they shut it down finally.
Yeah,
Uh, I love High Spots. I've dealt with them for years, like as far as like getting autographs and like DVDs, different collectibles. They're a good website to go through if you're a wrestling fan. Back when I went to WrestleMania 30, they during that weekend they do this every year at WrestleMania. I think they do it for SummerSlam now too, where they have WrestleCon, and so it's just a big giant convention with wrestlers, and that's where I first met Sting. I met Bret Hart at that. I met Terry Funk. So many guys that weekend. And High Spots was sponsoring a lot of those guys.
hmm
Like you, so like Sting was one of them. So you could like go and I liked that I could have done that because I bought it like a month or two ahead of time, like the autograph and the photo and everything with Sting, like off of just a High Spots' website. So that way, I could go ahead and buy that now. And then, like, when I get there, in between that time, I can like save some more money to take with me or whatever. And that's another thing. I hate to go back to like we were talking about conventions and stuff earlier, but like I know that a lot of conventions they'll do like the photo op, the pro photo ops and stuff that you can pre-purchase, but I wish they would do that with. I know there's some conventions that do with the autographs, but not a lot of them. But I wish they would do that because um, that way it gives fans that are going to these conventions and stuff more time to build that money back up because in case they want to spend it on vendors or something at the show, it's tough. I was talking to someone about this the other day, like vendors aren't doing as great at these conventions anymore because by the time the fans come and they've spent $500 on three people that are celebrities at the show, they don't have any money left to buy anything from the vendors.
right.
So it's a really shitty like scenario to be in, and I
Yeah,
feel like if that continues, then that's all these conventions are going to be is just the celebrities themselves, and there won't be any vendors.
yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I haven't, set up, to sell my book like at Scarefest or anything like that, is because I think it's like $500-600 or something like that for the weekend to set up, and if I don't make that, then I'm out. So
Exactly, and I know that's happened to plenty of vendors. Some that I've talked to in the past. They by the end of the weekend they barely have even enough money like for gas to get themselves back home.
yeah.
And that sucks, man. Like when you're put in that situation. Um, so I'm not saying it's not the conventions themselves. It's not. It's it's not even really the agents of these celebrities because from what I understand, these celebrities they're the ones that make their prices. Now,
Yeah.
the agent can suggest a price to them, but they don't have to do that. They can do it. They can go cheaper. They can go higher. Because I remember Sid Haig to the day he died, he charged the same price, and people were trying to get him to change, go up, and and he's like, no, I'm not. I'm fine right where I'm at. And so it's ultimately up to the celebrities to make their own pricing.
Mhm.
And so anybody that's gotten that idea that it's the convention, that's not the case.
Yeah.
It's not the convention's fault. So I just think that these celebrities and these stars that do these shows, they while it's great for them to make as much money as they can, they really do need to be more mindful of not every fan that wants to meet them is going to be able to afford that.
Yeah.
So but again, like I sorry that I keep going back to that,
No,
but it's been a very heavy topic here lately
no,
on online. So I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on it too.
no. It's so funny that you mentioned conventions because the very first time I met Danhausen was at a convention that we snuck into by, by accident, kind of. So one of my friends, it was when SummerSlam was in Nashville. A buddy of mine was getting married, and he wanted his bachelor party to go down to Nashville and go watch New
Mhm.
Japan Pro Wrestling because they were in town.
Right.
So, all right, cool. We'll go see New Japan. So when that was going on, we didn't realize that New Japan was also a part of, I think it was Starcast with
Hmm.
Conrad Thompson's thing, and I think it was also the same weekend that Ric Flair had his last match,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So I was like, "Oh, cool, Starcast is over there," and I knew Danhausen and a bunch of the wrestlers were there too. I was like, man, it's probably I don't want to go and pay to go through there. So we'll just stand in line, go to the New Japan show, and all that. So we're sitting there, we're outside, we're standing in line, and a buddy of mine's like, I really got to use the bathroom. And other of my friends was like, yeah, I do too. I was like, oh man, I was like, I don't know. He's like, can you stand here and save our spot? I was like, yeah, I'll sit here to save our spot. So they go off. Next thing I know, my buddy Ty, he just comes sprinting right over to me. He's like, go to that door right over there. He's like, our other buddy, he's like, he's over there. He's gonna let you in. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, no. He's like, seriously, you need to experience this. So I'm like, okay. So I'll go over there, and sure enough, there was no security. My buddy was on the other end, opens the door, lets me in, and I have been to conventions before, and I've been to wrestling conventions before.
Hmm.
This was like nothing I've ever seen in my entire life. I was walking around, and it was like almost anybody you could think of was there.
Yeah.
Like Hogan wasn't there, and or anything like that, but Ric Flair was, and he walked by us, and everybody wooed, and it was like, oh my god, there's Flair, and then like Billy Gunn's huge, and the Gun Club came up to us and it's like, hey, did you guys hear that the Gun Club was here? I was like, no, you mean the Ass Boys, like that. And like, we would walk around. I was like, there was Orange Cassidy. There was a lot of AEW guys there that day. There was a lot of legends. My buddy ran into Lex Luger in the bathroom. And then we just walked around Starcade for like 30 minutes. Like I went over and talked to Danhausen and met him, and said, hey, I'm the Emma Stein guy. He's like, oh yeah, and we started talking, and but it was surreal. Like it was just nuts. And so we got out of there because we didn't have wristbands or anything like that. We owe Starcast and Conrad Thompson some money, but it was a good memory.
Me and two of my friends were there that same week. We went to SummerSlam there in Nashville, and like, they were having all that other stuff in town, Starcast, and they had the Ric Flair's last match show, and we just went to SummerSlam though. Like I was trying to convince my buddies, like leading up to it, like, hey, this all this other shit's going on too. Like, let's go to this too. And they're like, no, no, we just want to go to SummerSlam and go back home. I'm like, dude, what the fuck? Like,
We got something. That would be great.
I'm like, they're having a wrestling convention there, like Ric Flair's last match show. They're having a New Japan show. Like it was all kinds of shit was going on. I was like, oh my god, like all this is feels like when I went to WrestleMania all over again. Like, but then when I talked to them about it, they're like, no, no, we don't really want to do that. But I was like, okay, whatever. But cool thing is though, that when we were walking back from SummerSlam that night, we had to walk across this bridge, and like we seen there was at the end of this bridge there was these two guys there. They were standing talking. One of them had an NWO shirt on, and I mean, I wasn't really paying like super attention or anything to it, but like I noticed the guy had an NWO shirt on, and then we got up there towards the end of the bridge where they were at. And we walked past them, and my buddy Kevin that was with us, he was like doing a double take. He's like, that was fucking Virgil. And I looked back, I was like, oh, holy shit, it was. And it was just like, he was just standing around just talking to people. Like, so yeah, I wish we could have went to I really wanted to go to that whole Rick, as much as shitty as that match was,
Oh,
that tag match with Flair. I wanted to go to that event, but just like my buddies were just not having it.
like we didn't go to that event. We just like we went to we snuck into Starcast for like just 30 minutes because I mean we got nervous because we didn't have wristbands,
Mm-hmm.
and then like we went to New Japan. The New Japan show was outstanding. I think the match of the night was probably FTR versus it was Kyle Fletcher and his partner
Mark Davis.
Davis, yeah. And it was when they was with I think it was the United Kingdom, or
Um,
I can't.
shit, I forgot their name too. United Empire, maybe.
United Empire, yeah, it was United Empire. That's who it was. That match was nuts. The Mox match was crazy. He got skewers in the head that night. Surprise, surprise. But yeah, that was a cool wrestling memory, man. It was really cool.
Well, since you are an AEW fan, you and your wife watch it. I gotta ask you, what were your thoughts on Revolution this past Sunday?
I loved it. Was it a little much at times? Yeah. The syringe part was a little much.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Oof, but that whole match, I mean, it told a good story. It did. And I respect it for that. Even if I do think something's like too much or something, I can always find bits and pieces about it that I enjoyed.
Oh yeah, like there, and I told this to someone not long ago, but I'm gonna have complaints. I think with every wrestling promotion that I watch, just because I complain about it doesn't mean that I dislike it.
Exactly.
I mean, AEW, they have things that I've definitely complained, as far as like their stories and stuff go. So some of the way they have handled certain wrestlers, I don't agree with,
Right.
but I'm still going to watch it because a lot of those guys that are in that company I've followed for years.
Mhm.
Roderick Strong being one of them. I mean, that guy's getting up there in age now, but he could still like hit those backbreakers like it's nothing.
Oh yeah.
I mean, dude is super talented. That's one of the biggest reasons why I watch, you know, this promotion or that promotion or whatever. Cause a lot of these guys I have followed for years. And just because they go to a certain promotion that's not doing as well as another promotion that I like, I'm not going to watch that. It's not that I'm not going to watch that because I am. I'm like, and I say this to everyone too. I said I think if you can get through the whole era of TNA with Hogan and Dixie Carter, then
Yeah.
you can watch anything, man,
Uh,
because that
it's
was a bad time.
so bad. so bad. I was a TNA guy too, and then
Hmm.
you know, especially when like Joe and Angle were going at it.
Oh God, yeah, that was a great time.
Yeah, and like we had guys like Christopher Daniels, AJ Styles. That X division was just insane. And then when they brought in Hogan and Bischoff and all that, you could see it going down.
Well, they took everything away from TNA that made it special to start with, you know, with the six-sided ring. That's the thing that really made TNA stand out so much. And then when they went back just to a regular four-sided ring, it just didn't feel as special anymore. And I know they've tried to bring that kind of back and, since that, but it was very temporary. But um, and I watch TNA. I think I like TNA right now a lot more than I've liked them in a long time.
Right.
But I think their partnership with WWE has a lot to do with that because it just makes things more interesting. You see, people from this show over on NXT or the main roster in WWE will show up on an episode of Impact and they're wrestling with these TNA guys,
Yeah.
and I love that. I really thought that's what they were going to do with AJ Styles. I thought they were going to have him retire, from WWE, but then
Mhm.
I thought he was going to show up in TNA
Me,
because I thought he was going to finish out his career there because that's really where he kind of made a name for himself to begin
right.
with, over 20 years ago or whatever. But who knows? I mean, they still could. I mean, he could still show up, do something.
Yeah.
They've been kind of teasing on WWE here lately, like a lot, like Shinsuke Nakamura has been having these like talks with Tama Tonga. Have you seen all that?
I have.
And it feels like that they're trying to do some kind of like reunion with a lot of these guys that kind of made their names for themselves over in Japan to
Mhm.
come together as like a stable or something. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think it would. I think it'd definitely work. If a lot of the fans, I still think a lot of the fans need to educate themselves out of that WWE bubble, though. You know,
Yeah.
about it. And, they can do it, and I think they can make it successful. But I think I don't know how I'm trying to say it. WWE has a way of just doing things that WWE does. If
Yeah.
that makes sense. Like if they'll try to rewrite history and say they're the first ones to do it.
Yeah.
And
That's definitely true.
I'm just gonna come out and say it. But like it was years later I found out. I was like, oh yeah, Andre the Giant's been body slammed before Hulk Hogan did. That was like the big one. Like when I was
Mhm.
like, oh really? And so that was my first incident. It was like, oh well, maybe not everything they present on WWE TV is 100% accurate.
Oh,
So,
no.
but yeah, I think it'd be great. I think it'd be really cool. I think it'd be entertaining. I think it might be a good nod to. But how can you not mention New Japan, or how can you not mention like some of these other promotions? While doing it. Um,
It seems like I don't really know like how they did because they have mentioned the Bullet Club on WWE TV here recently.
mhm.
So if they can do that, I mean, isn't Bullet Club still technically owned by New Japan?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I mean, I know they don't. I know the Bullet Club is disbanded. I do know that. I don't know about like the legal rights or the trademark or what.
Yeah, I don't either, man. That's why I think that they don't really allude to New Japan, like unless if there's some kind of copyright laws there or something that's causing them from being able to mention the promotion itself. But honestly, that's just another thing. Like it's what makes the wrestling business so complicated and convoluted, really. Like because there's there's so much of it out there nowadays. There's
Yeah,
so many different promotions and so many different, legalities behind it all. Um, but I definitely agree with what you're saying about, get yourself outside that WWE bubble. I love WWE,
I do too.
but definitely it's not the only thing that exists. You know, and for the people that act like it's the only thing that should exist, it is the best. I mean, maybe it is the best to some people. I like honestly, I'm one of those people. I like WWE out of all the promotions. Like it's because there's just I like what they're doing there. I like a lot of the guys that are there and the girls. I mean, I think that they have excellent women's wrestling in WWE.
They
They
do.
have, but they have excellent women's wrestling in so many other places too.
Hmm.
You know, AEW has a lot of good women's. I mean, Shimmer, a lot of stuff going over in Japan. Like you mentioned earlier, girl fight wrestling.
Oh yeah,
There's so much out there, guys, and just I really am with Dave on this. Like you need to go outside that bubble and just find something it there and there's going to be promotions out there that's not going to have the same production or the film quality or anything that what some of the stuff you see on TV. But I mean, that's not what it's all about, guys. I mean, it's really just all about like what you get out of the wrestling and those entertainers, themselves. It doesn't have to be the best lighting or the best production or the best sound or whatever, what I mean? As long as you're there, you're experiencing it and you're having a great time, that's what it's all about.
exactly.
Um, but I have a few more questions for you, Dave, and then we can kind of wrap this up. It just
You're,
depends on how long you want to go, man. But
you're and I'm good. I love talking about this stuff.
okay, so but the next thing I wanted to ask you was, what is your most favorite thing? So this is kind of a two-part question. So what is your most favorite thing and your least favorite thing about being a wrestling fan?
The, Now the most favorite thing about being a wrestling fan is able to experience it with my wife. Um,
I could see that.
that's awesome. If I get her to, you know, go to a wrestling show with me, and me and her will just have a ball. Like we went to JCW a couple months back,
Oh, awesome.
and my getting my, I could never see Shannon like 5 years ago, even wanting to go, and she was like, she wanted to go. She had a ball. Um, that's my favorite thing about wrestling is being able to go and spend time with her, make memories with her. Like like we were talking about collectibles and stuff earlier. I think
Mhm,
another reason why I don't collect as much anymore is because I want to be able to go out and experience things with her.
mhm.
And that's the best thing about wrestling right now for me.
So what would be your least favorite thing about being a wrestling fan?
The IWC.
100%. I agree with you on that for sure. Um, I mean, as long as it's not, affecting you personally, because it's going to be there, unfortunately, always. Because people just out there just trying to start arguments and just say terrible things about it. That really, it's not that serious. That's one of the biggest things that really bothers me is the end. I actually discussed that with my wife before I started doing this show. I was like, because I told her I want to do this show, and I want to talk with as many wrestling fans as I can. And it doesn't matter if they're they're just they're on YouTube or they're a wrestler themselves or they're just a regular fan that just watches. I want to hear different perspectives of wrestling fans. But she was actually the one that brought it. She's like, though, like there might be some people that you talk to that, are going to be like some of those people that are online in these groups. I'm like, yeah, that's very possible, but I can't look at it that way. You know what I mean? Like I want to, I still want to talk to those people, and I just want to kind of get their side of things and their perspective of why they feel that way, even though I don't agree with it.
And
Uh,
I commend you, man. What an awesome idea for a show.
I appreciate it, man. And I don't really like, like I said, I'm not really doing this for views or anything. I just doing this because I love wrestling, and I love talking about wrestling with other people that love it too. So, I mean, even if I, just get like a few views here and there, that doesn't matter to me. As long as I'm just getting to experience these conversations with people like you and other people that I have talked with in the past on the show, that's all that matters to me, man.
I feel you. I feel you, man. That's awesome.
And I'm glad you mentioned that about your wife too. Like you said, that's your most favorite thing about being a wrestling fan. Like, right now for me, currently, it's my nephew. Like, he's into it, and I'm sharing a lot of this stuff with him, and just seeing how he's kind of developing himself as a fan. I tried to get my son into it, um, but it's not his thing, man.
Yeah,
And I'm just I'm not one of them people that's going to force it onto him. Like, no, you have to. I like wrestling, so you have to like it too.
because
No,
he'll hate it, force it on him.
yeah, like cause because I've dealt with that in the past when I was growing up, and I was trying to get to like things, and I ended up hating it. Like, my dad. When I was a kid, he was always watching like the Andy Griffith Show and Bonanza and stuff, and like I wasn't really interested in it at that time, and he was just still trying to get me to watch it. I was like, no, I don't like these shows. I hate them, and so I would get mad because he was just trying to get me to watch them. But like it's so funny because, like, I grew up, and then when I started dating Candace, like, she's a huge Andy Griffith fan too, and, like, so she just ended up getting me into that show and stuff, and, like, so now it's, like, one of my favorite shows now is the end, and it's so funny because I hated it because my dad was, like, trying to make me watch it as a kid, so, like, I was like, "Oh, well, I'm not if I ever have a, kid, I'm not gonna do that. I don't if I might try to introduce him to things, but if he does like it, it's not his thing. I'm not going to force it on him.
Right.
But my nephew though, it came naturally with him. He just started liking. I never showed it to him. His dad never showed it to him. He just started liking wrestling on his own. And I was like, that's really awesome. And we took him to his first wrestling show, which was a Monday Night Raw last year in Louisville. And it was actually the day after Sabu had died.
Oh yeah.
And I still have my sign that I took to that show over here that says "Rest in Peace, Sabu." But so after that, like I started showing because my nephew did when I took that sign, he's like, "Who's Sabu?" And I was like, "Oh, well, let me show you a few things."
Yeah.
So I've really kind of gotten him into the ECW stuff here lately, and he loves Sabu and Rob Van Dam and Sandman and all those guys. So I'm glad to see it.
Oh yeah. BD.
Um, So, and that's another thing, man. Like I have to ask you because I talked about everybody about it on here because I have such a love for ECW. Um, I wanted to ask you like how when because we talked a little bit about earlier like the magazines and the tape trade and stuff like that. And that's how I kind of discovered ECW. But how did you discover ECW?
I think it was through friends. I think that was mainly what it was like, hey, there's this promotion out of Philadelphia. It's called ECW, and I was like, okay, that's cool. Who do they have? And I was like, well, they just finished up with the some an angles with Terry Funk and Cactus Jack, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, go on. And I kind of started. I remember I had to wait till like 3 o'clock in the morning to watch it because it was
Oh,
satellite TV, and it was one of those things where they would just like they would show you like clips of different matches from different shows and stuff like that. But it wasn't until probably when I started getting pay-per-views that I was able to really start getting into ECW. Um, I can't remember the very first paper ECW pay per view it was that I bought, but it it was through that was one good thing about the internet, honestly too, because the internet was really starting to kind of get bigger and stuff. So I was able to, you know, learn who Rob Van Dam was, or Sabu. It's like, Sabu is the Sheik's nephew, and all this stuff. And so yeah, it was just through word of mouth and just doing my own, like, you know, uh, my own digging, basically.
Yeah, that's basically how it was for me too. Like I said, the magazines was the biggest thing that kind of introduced me to it, and then later the tape trading, and then I think it was around '99 they got the TV deal with TNN.
Hmm.
So I remember I watched that. All I think it was the very first episode of it on TNN. The main event was Tommy Dreamer taking on the Dudley Boys for the tag team championships, and he was just by himself.
Yeah.
And, and I think that was like the Dudley Boys' last match right before they went over to WWF. Um, and that match ends with Raven returning to ECW and helping Dreamer win the tag titles.
Right.
And just at the time, and if you know the history of like ECW between Dreamer and Raven, it was just like kind of unheard of. And that's really like, what sparked even more interest, I think, for a lot of people at that time too, who didn't know what ECW was, even up to that point. And I never missed an episode of it when it was on TNN, because that was like the whole era with Rhino,
Mm.
because Rhino was the end up being the ECW champion, and like Steve Carino and Jerry Lynn, guys like that. That was, I mean, a lot of people when they talk about, I've talked about in the past when they talk about ECW, um, they say that they didn't really care for that whole era of ECW, but to me, I think that was such a great era. Mike Awesome was another guy.
Oh
I
yeah.
thought I loved Mike Awesome stuff in ECW, and just even though like when he had the matches with like Spike Dudley, Spike Dudley would just get tossed around like like he was a basketball or something.
Right.
And if you look at guys nowadays like Darby Allen kind of has that kind of similar aspect that Spike Dudley did.
Oh,
Uh,
I think Darby's got more of a death wish, but there's definitely there's definitely the similarities, because Spike would take some of those bumps and be like, "Oh my god, how's he
yeah,
still walking after that?"
yeah, exactly. And like it's the same exact thing with Darby. Like, um, just some of the spots that they put him in is just insane. And but you said you think he has a death wish. I just don't think he cares. I
I
don't
Yeah, I don't think I think he's at that point where he's just kind of like he wants to live life to the on the edge. So
just that's so dangerous, you know. But like I have a lot of respect for Darby and what he does. Like I mean, especially for his size, man. He he's a very really impressive dude, and like he just had that match the other night on or actually last night on Dynamite, that the casket match,
hmm.
and the way that they ended that match was so cool, man. Like he does the dive onto Gabe Kidd,
Hmm.
and then like and he goes into the casket, and then the lid shuts. It was like perfect, man. I'm
Perfect.
like they could have like messed that up so bad, but it just worked. It worked really good, man. Like, and I think Darby, he's a small guy. He has a very different look from a lot of them, but like, I mean, damn, I mean, he's a good worker, and it's just crazy to see like that's how much he worked with a legend like Sting,
Yeah.
um, and that that's how Sting went out as a tag team champions with
Mm.
Darby. So man, I gotta say I'm kind of jealous of Darby because who would have ever thought that he'd be like a guy that Sting would end up pretty much working his entire AEW career with.
And I think that's probably what Sting probably needed at that time in his late career. And I think that was probably something that Darby needed, on a personal level, is being around somebody that had all that experience.
Yeah,
I think that. probably helped them raise both of them up, to different calibers. And you take somebody like Sting, he's done it all, and has been to the show, and in various places, and then it's like he comes over to AEW, and it's like, what a way to end your career.
Yeah.
What?
And man, it kills me because I was supposed to be in at that show.
Ah,
Um, but of course, always stupid shit happens. I wasn't able to go, but and it kills me. It still kills me to this day that I didn't, because I have seen Sting wrestle in person in the past, but I just him being my favorite wrestler of all time, I wanted to be there for his last match. And even though I wasn't there, that was a hell of an event. And just that match itself, and just the stuff with his sons coming out there dressed in his the previous attires, and the one his one son, which is in the with the surfer Sting look.
yes,
That was that look that he came out, the red, white, and blue Sting. That's the first match that's the match that got me into wrestling, was
right.
when Sting fought Flair at that Great American Bash in 1990. So it was just very. I'm about positive if I would have been there, it would have been even more emotional than what I was watching it on TV.
Oh,
But
sure.
but yeah, some of my friends got to go to it, and so they won't let me live that down.
Oh, that's
But my last question I want to ask you before we go, man, is when it comes to your favorites of all time, not necessarily who you think is the greatest of all time, but just your four personal favorites of all time, who is on that Mount Rushmore for you?
well. We talked about Hogan,
Mm-hmm.
so he has to be on there for the simple fact of what he's the one that brought me to into this. Made me love professional wrestling. The next one would have to probably be Stone Cold Steve Austin,
Mm-hmm.
um, because the Attitude Era. I mean, he was the guy. He was the one that, I mean, everybody knew Stone Cold. My mom, she was a huge Stone Cold Steve Austin fan. He's the one that actually kind of brought her back into wrestling too. Um, and then see, that's two. My third one is probably Foley. Um, just because I love Mick Foley. I see so much of Mick Foley as a human being that I want to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's a genuine, just down to earth, just nice guy. He uses his platform in ways that I think he should for somebody. Just a super awesome dude. The fourth, I'm going to say Flair, um, because it's Rick fucking Flair. And
And I'm glad you say that, man, because a lot of people have kind of turned on Flair here the past few years too because of his own personal stuff, and um, I just again that's a very tough thing to discuss because just my feelings on it. I mean, I'm just because of what something they do in their real lives, it's still not going to affect anything to me of why I became a fan of them in the first place with their wrestling career.
right,
Um, so yeah, even though Flair has done some questionable things for
yeah,
sure,
yes,
um,
but it's
and th-
hard to not say the greatest of all time without mentioning Ric Flair.
yeah, I mean, if I'm doing a greatest of all time Mount Rushmore, Hogan and Flair are both definitely on. Stone Cold's on there too. For the fourth one is always the hardest one for me though,
Me
man.
too, and that's the reason why I went with somebody like Foley. Even though I picked him third,
Mhm.
um, Flair, Stone Cold, and Hogan were always going to be on there. But to me, Foley is, I have a lot in common with Foley. He's an author. He's big into LGBTQ rights. He's just he and his latest stance on political issues that relate totally with mine. I don't want to go down that road because it's the conversation place to have that conversation. But you know, but I love Foley. He's an awesome dude.
Yeah, I mean, 100%, man, and I think that's my wife's favorite wrestler of all time too is Foley. So, like, when we met him at that book signing in West Virginia, like, she was just ecstatic, man, and because when we first got together, like, a lot when I said we was going to conventions and stuff like that, she would rarely talk to because she was very shy. She would rarely talk to a lot of the guests. But man, she really like talked with Foley when we met, and it showed me like that she was truly a huge fan of this guy. And like I said, we met him other times, beyond that too. Like he came to our library here in Hazard one time and did a free signing for that. And I actually took my son, I think was just like 3 years old, I think at the time, and it's so funny. He was doing so good, like the whole time we were standing in line to meet Foley, and like he was doing so good. And then as soon as we got up to Foley for there, he starts crying. He's like bawling, crying, and
Oh,
I'm like, oh no. but but yeah, Foley. I mean, and he was just like cutting up with us and stuff, like making jokes because my son, he's like, I know I'm scary looking kid, but you ain't gotta cry about it. Stuff like, such a funny guy, such a super nice guy, and just I mean, he really takes his one of those guys that takes his time with everybody he meets. Um, so I mean, yeah, it's, like you said, he's just outside of wrestling. He's just an incredible human being. He really has, his just stuff. He really stands for what he believes in,
oh,
and I respect that more than anything. And he made the decision to not be associated with WWE for political reasons, and I 100% respect that. I mean that was very brave of him. I mean he could have just like let it go, but he felt so strongly about it,
mhm.
that is just something he couldn't, personally support, and I definitely understand it. Because a lot of people just couldn't do that, and because they're too worried about making money or whatever, so they're not, even though if they side with him on that,
Yeah,
it's a tough situation to be in, but like I think Foley's one of those guys that he knows that he's going to have opportunities wherever he goes.
yeah,
Um, so good for him, man, for standing up for what he believes in.
absolutely.
Um, but man, I do want to appreciate you and just say thank you once again for taking time to do the show.
Thank you
Um,
for having me on, man. I'm sorry I had to cancel last week. I mean,
oh no, it's no big deal, man. I mean, things happen, like I had another friend of mine, Stu, was supposed to have done the show a couple nights ago. He got sick, so I'm gonna have to get him rescheduled at some point too. But like I said, life happens sometimes, so that's no big deal. I'm just glad I was able to have you on though. Is there anything else that you want to add, or you have anything coming up that you want to talk about?
just if you want, people can add me on Instagram, 812 the count. I'm the same way on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
812 the count. Of course, David Caudell. You can always add me on Facebook, but yeah, if you add me on Facebook, I'm pretty outspoken about certain political figures. So yeah, just beware. But yeah, man, the new book, is coming out soon. I've got a new artist that I'm working with, and I'm busy writing it, and it's going to be heavily wrestling related and very pro female. So
Oh, super cool.
yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited.
And like as Dave was saying, be sure to follow him on Instagram, and I do have his Instagram link, I think, in the description of this video, and also, like I said earlier, that Amazon link for the book Adventures of Emma Stein. So be sure to go check that out, grab a copy of that. But sir, it has been a pleasure, and just on behalf of both myself and Daveamania, I want to thank everyone for watching the show. I've got some really cool stuff coming up. Just stay tuned for that. Be on the lookout for all that. If you haven't already, be sure to like, subscribe, and click that effing bell, brother, right here on the CraterMania channel. And we will see you next time on How I Got Into Wrestling. He's American man.